Hi, everybody. I am April Cummings from Cayman Life TV, and of course, this is the fabulous Patrick Brendel of Cayman Currents.
Hi, April. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And this is another exciting edition of EDBEAT.
Yes, being
So I
shot
like to,
live on location from
yeah,
lovely
you're
Curacao.
you're in Curacao, and I'm in
Yeah,
the kitchen. It's just not working out right for me, man. I gotta have some hashtag career goals. All right, because saying hashtag makes me cooler. So, in order to achieve these lofty career goals of mine, I think that means we need to talk a little education news this week. Let's get started with the data report, as I like to call it, capital D, capital R.
that's right. So, as our readers and watchers will know, for about the past month, the Current has been going through and doing a series of analyses on the Education Data Report, which is the government's key document um, about the performance of the public school system in the last school year, so 2020, 2021. And this past week, the Current published the ninth and final installment uh, of our series on the data report, and it's really like I describe it as the whole enchilada. We list our key observations from our analyses, and we've got lots of charts, lots of tables, lots of graphs for to help people kind of process these different data points visually. So it's for me, it's exciting to put together because you go from a 50-page document to a bunch of Excel spreadsheets to a bunch of stories to finally here is the presentation, the education landscape as I think I see it.
Exciting spreadsheets. All right, so I've disappeared there for a minute just to pull up the screen from Cayman Currents, and there we go. Okay, so this
There's the
is,
oh, no, that's
is
the
this
one
the,
before.
oh yes, look at me go. I told you I can't see today. I'm like, really having trouble there. So let me not give away all the breaking news here. Okay, key takeaways and roundup. Got it.
Yeah, so just going down, I can, the power of bullet points is after scores in year 11 exams spiked in 2020 at the onset of the COVID pandemic, where the tests were administered differently. So then the next year, which would be last spring, they regressed to the mean that we've seen over the better part of the last decade. And then, but when you're talking about the gender gap between performance between girls and boys in English and
Hmm.
math, girls still reign supreme. They both girls beat boys again in English and math, although the gap between the two is narrowing, particularly in mathematics. And speaking of math, uh, students in Cayman tend to score much better on the English part of the exam than on math. And so poor math scores are what are keeping our students from attaining the national expected standard, which is to get 5 or more level 2 passes, including in English and math. When you look at the different high schools, Clifton Hunter significantly, and you can keep scrolling down so you can see all everyone's
Yeah,
got a chart.
all
And
this exciting data. So
yeah, so
there's the
there's the
math.
gender gap, red for girls, blue for boys.
Look at
Um,
you go.
Yeah, there's the math scores. So you can see
Hmm.
math is in the middle, and the blue line is the performance. It's lagging behind English and science. Um, and then when you look at the schools, so Clifton Hunter significantly. And this is a little harder to see, but Clifton Hunter significantly outperformed John Gray on year 11 exams. But over on the BRAC, Layman Scott students are still setting the standard, although they had a little hiccup compared to some previous years. Um, and then it's interesting, and I think we've talked about almost all of these points before in
Hmm.
detail, but when you start mining the data, I'm looking for things about how the COVID school closures might have affected student performance. So really trying to uh, put some numbers on if there's any learning gap in the schools because of COVID. And so when year 6 students went back to school in fall 2020, after schools have been closed for a couple months, their scores on reasoning tests. So this is supposed to be a measure of ability, not knowledge. Their
Hmm.
scores dropped from the previous year. And when you look at those scores from the primary schools, student performance varies widely from primary school to primary school, and some schools are able to bring students' performance up from what might be predicted by these, we call them CAP4 test results, and other schools were not able to. Again, on the BRAC, the two public primary schools on the BRAC had the highest scores among all the public schools.
And just a quick question before I forget on my for clarity's sake. So when we were talking about them improving or not improving from year over year, so let's say we're talking about what did you say it was year 6, right? A minute ago?
Yes.
Are we comparing it to the prior year's year 6, or how the students would have compared to where they were, in year 5?
So from year to year, when I'm talking about the first thing I talked about the reasoning test, so it was that cohort. So it's that group of kids in year 6 and fall 2020
Right.
did worse than the kids from fall 2019 on the predicted test. And when I talk about schools, the other part, schools being able to bring up student performance through the school year in terms of their expected results versus their actual, I'm talking about the same group of students. So that would be these kids take this test in fall 2020 that predicts how well they'll be doing in the spring. Then they take the actual test in the spring, and you can see how they did based on expectations.
So that's kind of a progression, basically. How did we go? Well, I guess progression is inherently positive, but
Yes.
from my perspective, it's really just looking at where we started and where we ended up, and how does that look? Like,
Yeah, and I think that's something that is a recurring observation when you're talking about how well is the school doing. It's not only for me, the bottom line number is, hey, how many kids meet the national expected standard, and you get a percent. But the other dimension is, okay, well, where were these kids at the beginning of the school year or a few years ago, and what's the amount of progress have they made, even if some of them may not have met that bottom line. So schools talk a lot about pushing the kids from the left to the right.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, sorry. So I interrupted you. You were talking. I think
I was on
we
a
were talking
roll,
about. I know, on a roll,
a
baby.
ramble.
We were talking about the BRAC, though.
Yes. So as you'll see on the BRAC, it's
Here we go.
West End Primary School and Creek and Spot Bay Primary School. So if you look at the paragraph above that chart,
Here we go.
so it's written kind of backwards because of the way I formatted it. But the most kids who are able, so in mathematics, for example, Creek and Spot Bay, 100% of kids in the school met the standard in math. 93% of the kids met the standard in reading at West End, and 93% in West End met the standard in writing. And so those were the 3 highest pass rates among any schools in the Cayman Islands in those subjects. So if you look at who had the best performance in math, it's a BRAC primary school. Who had the best performance in reading and writing? It was the other BRAC primary school. So you can kind of project that to say, okay, which kids are going to be the best prepared when they're starting secondary school. These numbers indicate it's the kids who are starting out at Lehman Scott, which year over year, every year on record, ends up when you get to year 11, they have the best test scores.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a reputational track record now, right?
Yeah. And that's what you want. You want to get and you talk about like culture and parent involvement and all these soft factors that are really important. And so if you have a community around a school that has a culture of success and an expectation of success, and parents are involved and students are engaged and teachers are optimistic, I mean, that's a great foundation to have to predict future success.
Yeah, and because you've got all of the different components working toward the same end goal, basically.
Yes. And then we'll look at this chart. This is about how students with special education needs performed. And there's 3 phases of SEND is what they call it, special education needs or disabilities. So you have students who don't have any suspected or diagnosed needs. You have students who may not have a disability but speak English as a second language, so they need a little extra help on the side to catch up. And then you've got the 3 phases. And phase 1 is a teacher flags the students as they might have a special education need, and they'll get extra attention in the classroom. And I'm kind of generalizing here. Phase 2, they say, okay, we really think this kid has a special need or disability. They get attention within the school, so an extra level of resources. Then in phase 3 is this kid has a diagnosed very specific need or disability, whether it's dyslexia or I'm not
What I like to call the mathlexia, which is not really what it's called.
mathlexia. Yeah, so something where they put a name on it, a professional has diagnosed them with that, and then they'll get help from a system level, so from centralized government help. And
Which
so
we've seen a bump in resources, as I recall, I think
yes.
this past couple of years.
Yeah, and I guess the bottom line is the kids who have suspected or diagnosed needs or disabilities perform significantly worse on exams than students who don't may not be having to deal with those issues. And there's some nuances in there between the phases that I think are worth noting. And then our final observation is, and we kind of jump way out in a regional pattern. So usually when kids take the CSEC exams, which it also can be known as CXCs, so these are the Caribbean secondary school exit exams, right? Year 11. They take the test in the spring. The results come out in the fall, and you can start doing comparisons on these test scores. Well, because of COVID, there were delays in the scores being released. There was some back and forth on adjustments. And I have a big disclaimer on this chart. Like, several countries haven't even released their scores yet from the tests that were taken a year ago now. Cayman scores were first contained in the education data report. So using that and sourcing other from other publications around the region, we can see how Cayman's students did compared to the Caribbean average and then some of our peer countries. So this year, our year 11 students beat the Caribbean average in maths. That's why the red dot, which is Cayman, is to the right of the axis. And they performed worse than the Caribbean average in English, which is why we're below that horizontal axis. And just as I said before, our students tend to perform better in English than in maths on these tests, but the regional trend is the same. So regionally, kids tend to perform better on the English than the maths.
I'm not going to say a single thing about that part because math is not my favorite. So just to be fair. So essentially, for folks who maybe haven't been watching or just watching for the first time, what Patrick did and Cayman Current is they basically took this giant report and then looked at what the various components of the data set and sort of chunked it into pieces that you could examine more closely and more carefully. It can be very difficult to process all of this kind of information at once. So this piece sort of pulls together all of the different pieces that the Current has taken a look at in depth, and then gives you an opportunity, I think, to reflect and learn from, and also maybe come up with some new questions to ask about, what things could be done going forward to help improve where we are and build on our strengths where we have them. So I think, Patrick, that is my fairest assumption of
Yeah, because you can speak a lot in generalizations, and you can say, oh, there's the schools are bad, or the schools are good, or this school is bad, or this school is good. But if you look at the different elements of the performance data that's collected over time, you can see there are nuances, and there are successes, and there are challenges, and there's also some trends when you look at it over. So for me, the top line observation is we've really increased public spending and resources and staffing and facilities, put a lot of investment on this in the past 5 to 10 years. And if you look at where the kids are getting out of year 11, it's 40%. 40% of the kids meet the national expected standard. That's the mean. That's where we are.
So, and this is because I have only had like a quarter cup of coffee so far today. So, based on that nice line you just showed me, does that mean that this expense has not shown a significant payoff or a visible payoff that we can
Correct.
see? And I'm not saying, look, to be honest, many things come and go. There are lots of
Yes.
changes and variables and differences, but the big spend, even if it may have improved the quality of life for both teachers and students, because a happier teacher is a happier student, generally speaking, it didn't necessarily correspond to a gigantic increase in performance, or did it?
Right, it didn't. And but then we say there's wrinkles and nuances. So if
And
you
a
look at
pandemic too, right? I'm
yeah,
going to say, like,
yeah,
that's
and if you look
complicated.
at Clifton Hunter High School, their scores have been increasing, especially last year. Not compared to the pandemic, but you just kind of throw that data point out. That's what
Yeah.
the officials
So if you
advise.
pull that out of the equation, they've been
Yeah.
seeing progress.
Yes, and they've got the the new campus and the new facility. So somebody I think could point to Clifton Hunter specifically and say, well, Patrick, we put a lot of investment in facilities into Clifton Hunter, and we're seeing results on this from the kids who have been going to their whole secondary school career in this great facility. And then they could say, and look, we're getting done with the John Gray project, and part of it is open. We want to get it open in the next couple of years, and then maybe we'll see also improvements in student performance at John Gray, because you have to admit, like, the John Gray campus is not fit for purpose right now. There's a lot of inefficiencies, even trying to get from class to class. It's a hassle. So, maybe that will pay off. But
Yeah. And the risk with data like this, of course, is that you can make a big assumption without that necessarily being the reason. But it does give you some opportunities to take a look at what's different from one to the other, and then examine that a little more closely. I mean, my caution is, I don't think that the better building always means that you're going to do great. I think it's, as you said in Cayman, right? It's
yeah,
it's not the fanciest buildings. It's that
yeah,
whole
right.
comprehensive approach where all the parts are working together well. But that doesn't mean that John Gray doesn't need an upgrade, and that we might not see a payoff as a result. But my warning is the risk of, because I love oversimplification, right? But there is the risk of oversimplifying and making big decisions based on that data without looking at all the nuances that you kind of need to factor in. Okay, so, and because education is our theme, but also different kinds of education. We're going to talk in a minute about inclusion, Cayman, and some leadership there. But Health City, let's go to that next, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we got another clip show going off from last week, so I can test April's editing skills. But I got a chance to sit down and talk to Charles Bush at Health City Cayman Islands about the Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship, or SURF program, which is where they bring kids in, even as young as, I believe, 16, all the way up to university age, and they get a chance to they do a research project, and they do a paper, and they spend time at the hospital, and really kind of get to immerse themselves in the healthcare field. And we use trying to use a broad term healthcare field, because it's not just for kids who want to be doctors. It's for
Right.
kids who are maybe interested in being nurses, or X-ray technicians, or psychologists. So there's anybody who's been to a hospital knows there's a lot of different kinds of people with different kinds of specialties. So there's lots of, from a career standpoint, lots of potential opportunities. And so their application process is open now for the summer. And so we want to try to help them get the word out, because I think it's a great opportunity that not a lot of communities across the world have.
All right, so let's roll the clip with Master Charles.
Hi, I'm here with Charles Bush, who is the Senior Education Coordinator for Health City Cayman Islands. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Patrick. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Health City's Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship, also known as SURF, which takes place this July. The dates are July 5th through the 29th. And nevertheless, this is timely because right now they're accepting applications, and the deadline for that is 30th of May, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
So can
So
you,
we're right now we're in the final 2 weeks. As we speak, we're in the final 2 weeks of the application process.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about SURF and its history? It's been around for nearly a decade now, what the program's gonna be like this summer.
Yeah, so we're now in our, I believe this is our 9th iteration of SURF. So yeah, actually it is almost a decade. And SURF is really, I mean, it's really the best, medical internship program in the Cayman Islands. And what makes it unique is that it's an immersive experience for the students who participate. What SURF is really a combination of theory and practicum. So the students who are successful in obtaining a place in SURF, they get the chance to work on a case study, which we assign them, and they have to develop a plan of care for that patient in on the case study, and to help them do that, they attend a daily lecture from a subject matter expert from the various areas in the hospital that we want them to take into account in the research paper. And then they also will shadow a consultant in an area that they choose. So they will, will shadow that consultant throughout their month with us. And most, if not all, of the students will get the opportunity to view surgeries. So they'll get the opportunity to be right there in the theater with the surgeon viewing surgeries, and we also offer writing workshops, which aren't necessarily mandatory for the students, but they're highly recommended, because one of the outcomes that we want to see students have at the end of SURF is improved research and writing skills. And consistently, at the end of every SURF, students report back to us saying that their research skills and their writing skills are higher than when they started, and that's what we want to hear, as well as hearing that their understanding of the medical field is much higher than it was when they started. So there are internships which are, and I have an intern now, where her internship is really about filing and organizing and those sorts of things. And there's value in that. I'm not going to take away from that. But what we offer for our students who are on a path to the medical field is an immersive experience in the medical field for the month that they are with us. So it's such a valuable experience for them, and it really places them. I've had it described as the level of experience that they gain in a month of SURF is similar to what a second-year medical student might see. And a lot of these students are undergrad students a lot of our SURF fellows are undergrad students who aren't even in medical school yet, or they're first year medical students. So they haven't even gotten to the level of, you know, what they're going to see while they're in SURF. So
Yeah.
they, they come away, they come away, miles ahead of their peers.
Yeah, and so I believe SURF comes with a stipend of 1,000 CI, which isn't bad
Yeah,
for a month of great education.
no,
And
sorry, I'm just reaching over here because I'm just reaching on the screen, which is not behaving. Yeah, my notes over here.
And you mentioned undergraduates, but also I believe that I have the screen too. I'm cheating. That you can be in high school as well to be a junior fellow. So if you're 16 years old and at least in year 11, you can start to
Right.
take advantage of this fellowship program.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. So so we have, and we've always done this, but we're sort of making it more obvious this this year. We've always done it. We've had junior fellows, which are students who are in high school and are working towards going off to university to study medicine. And then we have our fellows, then which are the students who are in university, working, studying for that, on that path.
Yeah, and so
So
you
yes,
mentioned you've used the term medical field a few times. I think that's something that we want to make a distinct point on. Is it's not just for kids who want to be doctors, and as any doctor will tell
absolutely,
you, doctors are really important. And but the whole health field encompasses a lot of different professions, from
absolutely.
nursing, psychology, including physicians. So could you talk a little bit about the opportunities for
Sure,
students who are interested in the medical sector, but maybe they don't think right now maybe being a doctor isn't for them?
sure. And we're just as keen to have someone who wants to be a lab tech or a radiographer or a radiologist as we are to have someone who wants to be a doctor or a nurse. And when I give a tour to new Shadow Doctor students, and Shadow Doctors is another education product that we have, I love to tell this story, and um, I'll I'll do my best to keep it short in the interest of time. But um, as you know, Patrick, I'm also a board certified chaplain. So for my first 5 years here, I practiced at the bedside also. So, and I believe this happened in first year of operations. I used to come in the mornings and do my pre-surgical rounds to see patients before they went in for their surgeries. And one morning I had to come in to see very, very, very early. I had to come in to see a patient who was having a surgery, and I had to be there at 6:30 in the morning. Um, and I had learned from the night before when he was having a surgery, and so I knew that I was going to have there at 6:30 in the morning. So I made plans and I got there in time to see him. And when I got to the ward, I asked at the ward for the patient, and the nurses said, "Oh, that surgery has been canceled." And sort of my immediate instinct, and I think anybody would, sort of be like, "Well, somebody could have mentioned this. I wouldn't have woken up." But I decided to use my curiosity instead, and I said, "Well, why was the surgery, stopped?" And they said, "Well, the lab found something overnight in his blood. He has an infection in his blood, and they stopped the surgery. And I always use that story on a tour of our hospital to say every job is important, because if the lab techs on the night shift, and this wouldn't happen, but for the sake of argument, if the lab techs on the night shift had said, look, I'm on the night shift, I don't really care, let's just put this lab test through, I'm just gonna mark the box as done, whatever, that patient would have died, right? So every job is important. So I'm just as excited, and I mean this when I say it, I'm just as excited to have someone who wants to be a future lab tech in SURF as I am to have someone who wants to be a doctor. So, yeah. If SURF, yeah.
Oh no, I'm saying so you get a range of students in ages and in their areas of interest.
Right.
How do you tailor the program to say the 16-year-old junior fellow who maybe wants to do pre-med, and then you might have a kid who's already in medical school?
Yeah, well, we it's all about knowing your students, right? So, I would need to spend maybe a bit more time with the 16-year-old and explain things, work through the writing process a bit differently with that student, and understanding what they can handle at that age. So they might not be ready to handle the same length of a paper as an undergrad. The content will remain the same, but those are the students who I would probably insist come to the writing workshops, because they're going to need that, and it's only going to help them whether they go on to UCCI dual enrollment or whether they go on straight into UCCS, associates, whatever. It's only going to benefit them in that next step. But it's all about knowing your students, and it's all about having an understanding of youth development theory, and understanding where a 16-year-old is in their developmental process versus a 23-year-old. So yeah, I mean, expectations can be tailored. The content will be the same, but expectations can be tailored. And everybody, it's about meeting every student where they are, and understanding that every student is an individual.
And so can you tell us where people can go to find more? You guys have a website, obviously, which I think will be the main point of entry. What's the URL for that?
Yeah, so they can go to Health City Cayman Islands /SURF.
And so I'm actually on the website now, and so I can tell you it has all the information that you want, the requirements, links to the various forms, and I guess, is there anything else that you want to highlight about the SURF thing before we were going to show a clip of a testimonial from a student from 2020? But
sure.
Before we go to that, any final thoughts?
I recognize that it's sort of difficult to get everything into a 10-minute interview. If a parent or a student has any questions, please feel free to give me a call. or to email me. My email address is charles.bush@healthcity.ky. That's charles.bush@healthcity.ky. And the office number is 640-4195, 640-4195. Please give me a call and we can talk through any questions that you may have, and let's get you signed up. Let's get you on the application form, and we can take it from there.
Great. Well, thanks again for
Thank you very
being on
much.
EDBEAT and talking about what I think is a really cool and kind of unique experience for Cayman. I know there's no opportunity like this in my hometown where I grew up, so it's interesting and heartening to see. And we're gonna cut away and end on a video featuring Zoe Connolly Basdeo, who was a 2020 fellow, and kind of apropos to what we were talking about earlier, at the time Zoe was a second-year student studying psychology, so she's going to be able to give that perspective. So
Yes.
We'll cut to Zoe.
My name is Zoe Connolly Basdeo. I'm going into my second year BSc Psychology student, and I recently completed the Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship at Health City, Cayman. I would definitely recommend this program to any other young person, not only looking to expand their skills in medical field, but any young person that is interested in science or professional development and gaining a better, more technical understanding of the healthcare industry. It offers so many practical skills, the opportunity to talk to such learned and professional doctors. I cannot understate the importance of providing such opportunities to young Caymanians. At first, it was definitely very different for me. I've never participated in a virtual program before, but I felt that Health City did a fantastic job in providing us with videos and interactive tours of the facility to help us get a feel of what it looked like, as well as all the Zoom sessions were very professionally conducted and organized. And overall, I felt that it went fantastically. So I didn't feel like it impaired my experience at all with the program. This opportunity was very unique to anything I've ever experienced before. And I'm studying in London right now, so it's a bit harder to find opportunities such as these. But in Cayman, we have the chance to work with leading doctors at a world-class hospital and be interactively pursuing and writing up a case report for a real-life patient. So that was really exciting for me to learn these practical skills, and especially how not just the medical part of the skills and the program, but the supply chain and the finance and billing and all the other components that make the healthcare system work. We got to learn all about that as well. So that particularly really drew my interest. I think the most interesting and valuable experience for me is that I got assigned a mentor, the consultant psychiatrist here at Health City. And since I'm studying psychology and my interests are in mental health, I was really grateful to have the opportunity to add the mental health aspect to my report, especially as it was a polytraumatic patient. So mental health cannot be ignored in situations such as those. You have to take it as well as physical health. So being able to understand the referral process and what the consultant psychiatrist would do in that situation was very helpful for me as a student and as a young professional. So my program overseas is very focused on research and the theory. So in order to gain that practical experience, I would have had to look elsewhere, outside of my course, outside of what I was offered at university, because as a first-year student, there are not too many opportunities. So I would have probably looked to the HSA or other hospitals on island, but the unique perspective that SURF gave me in terms of not just the medical theoretical aspect, but the industrial perspective, that really differentiated it from any other experience I would have looked to otherwise in Cayman.
Yeah, so thanks to Charles for coming and being on camera and talking about that with us. And I did get to practice my video interview skills again this week. I talked to the new CEO of Inclusion Cayman, which some people may be more familiar with under their former name, which was Special Needs Foundation Cayman. And this lady is a lady named Shan Harriman, and we'll have a clip where she talks about her background and her goals more efficiently and eloquently than I can. But I was very pleased to meet her. And so Ms. Harriman is a CPA, like so many people on our fair island. She's worked in the private financial services sector, as well as for the Cayman Islands government. And so she has public sector experience, private sector experience. She happens to be a generational Caymanian. So she really knows and has been a part of the community, since the very beginning. And I think that's important in a leadership position, especially in a nonprofit that's dealing with the community. And she also is the mother of a teenage daughter with disabilities. So she, as she says, she can really bring her personal and professional experience to the role of CEO in this charity. So
All right,
we
so
can let her talk instead of me.
let's give her a listen.
Hi, I'm here with Shan Harriman, who's the CEO of Inclusion Cayman, and she's been on the top job for about a month now. And I'm really glad to have an opportunity to meet Ms. Harriman and catch up with her. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Patrick, for having me on. These are exciting times at Inclusion Cayman. I am very fortunate to have this opportunity to join as the CEO of Inclusion Cayman. It's right, I've been here about a little bit over a month. I joined back in April on the 11th. Just a little bit of background. I am a certified public accountant by background. I used to work for a law firm. I worked with government. I worked in financial services, audit. It's about 25 years experience I have under my belt. And I think one of the key areas that drew me to this position is the fact that I am a mom to a 14-year-old little girl that has varying disabilities. I think that my journey with her puts me in a good position to assist other families that might be going through similar struggles that we did. Our goal here at Inclusion Cayman is to assist families and advocate. Our areas of focus is education, employment, recreation, but we are here to represent persons with disabilities, individuals and their families, to be their voice. So we are very much involved with the community, and we are excited about our breakfast that's going to be coming up June 2nd. It's our annual fundraiser. So we are hoping to have a really good turnout. Those funds will make a big difference in the role that we play in Cayman, and advocating and promoting inclusive lives for individuals with persons with disabilities, and hopefully making a lot of inward roads. Again, exciting times. Hopefully you see everyone as much as we can at the breakfast in a few weeks. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And kind of with your background, and we were chatting a little bit before we hit the record button on the video. And so you're bringing private sector experience, public sector experience as a generational Caymanian. You really, know and are a part of the culture, which I think is really important and a good asset, especially in leadership positions that deal with the community. And then you have the personal experience as well. So, I can see why the folks at Inclusion Cayman thought you were ticking off a bunch of boxes here. And for people who haven't been to the annual breakfast, I highly suggest, if you can go. It's a really powerful event. Lots of testimonials from people and with disabilities and family members, and talking about some of the challenges they faced, but also success stories. And it can be really moving. And people don't usually cry at breakfast, but sometimes it happens at the Inclusion Cayman event. So that's coming up in June. And at the current, we'll be sure to keep everybody up to date on the event as it approaches. And also as Inclusion Cayman's activities in general, because as you mentioned, one of your three key areas of focus is education. And so we follow and keep track of, they call it SEND in the public school system, special education needs and disabilities, and the strategies the system uses, and how the students are performing and the resources that are available to them. So Yeah, once again, I started rambling myself. But thanks a lot for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and it is really nice to meet you. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other as you carry out your role.
Yes, excited. I'm very much looking forward to having further conversations, and thank you again. And I hope everyone can attend the breakfast as much as possible, or just continue to show their support for Inclusion Cayman. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too.
So a diverse set of experiences, which is really helpful. And I think, as you mentioned before the clip too, just having that sense of how both private, public sector work here, all of that combined together prepares you probably better than most for a job of this type, and one that is so important here in Cayman.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate what's been said is they have one big fundraiser every year, which is their fundraiser breakfast. I've been before, and I think I knew about the organization but didn't really know about what they were doing. I gave a donation at the time. Very moving event with testimonials from parents and clients themselves about how challenges they might face and how the organization has helped them overcome. So I think it's important to support all of the very worthy causes in Cayman, including Inclusion Cayman and the Cayman Current, which is also a nonprofit. And that segues me in to a big thank you for organization that has stepped up to support the Current. And I want to say thank you to Doctors Hospital, who, and this is exciting for me because they've become the very first sponsor of our weekly Current newsletter. And
fantastic news.
Yes, and it's important to me because the week when I started the organization, it was really based around our key editorial product being this weekly newsletter that's free, that comes out into everybody's email. And so it's really our flagship editorial product, and it's really great to get a good sponsor like Doctors Hospital to support the newsletter so that we can keep sending it out for free to everybody without need for subscription or anything like that. So
and the newsletter is also just such a great, for those of us with some attention span challenges. What I really do like about the newsletter is it really does give that here the things you need to know that we're covering and doing and talking about. And that way I can pick and choose which items to link back to on the site. And also, to be honest, sometimes, things will come up. I can always go back to the newsletter as a reference source to go. I know last week there was a mention of such and such, and as opposed to me going to the website and searching it, I could just check my email and then click that link and go right back. So it's really a good way to get a sense of what's going on in education. And thank you from me too to Doctors Hospital as well for their sponsorship, because that's amazing. Okay,
and of course there is a link between EDBEAT and the Weekly Current newsletter, because based on how the timing of how we do things, usually April and I shoot EDBEAT. And then when it comes out and is broadcast and put online, that is when I put the link into EDBEAT into the newsletter and send it out to the audience.
It gives me a TV-like deadline.
Yeah. The difference between doers and dilettantes is deadlines.
All right, thanks everybody for joining us for another edition of EDBEAT. I'm April Cummings, and once again, Patrick Brendel, almost live from Curacao.
Thanks, April.
All right, have a good week, everybody.